Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episode 74 of Lyoko. I'd rather not talk about it. And by the title alone you can tell this is a gym episode. Pretty much, the group has been trying to get more into shape to fight Xana, and unfortunately Jeremy kind of sucks as a teacher. The extent of his teaching is just run faster, faster, or timing them with a stopwatch, etc. And the group is getting a little sick of it. As such, they air these complaints with Jeremy, and while he gets a little snippy at them for it, they do believe that they possibly could use a new teacher that could possibly help, that could possibly be more, that could be more motivating, so to speak. And Aelita thinks of a perfect one, Jim. As such, Jeremy and the rest of the group go to him and they ask him if he'd be willing to train them as he was apparently special forces, and he actually agrees rather easily. However, we soon learn why. It turns out why he agreed so readily is because, well, Jeremy's the stereotypical geeky, nerdy guy, so he doesn't really do much in the way of physical education. So the fact that Jeremy was the one asking for the group gave Jim the impression that Jeremy was going to be a part of this, so he's actually all for it. And even though Jeremy has to back out of it, Jim doesn't take no for an answer and says that they should all meet him out in the forest in 1500 hours, or by 1500 hours. So Jeremy pretty much has no choice, and the whole group goes there, and yeah, it's essentially just a boot. It's just boot camp. They go like they do drills, push-ups, that thing where the barbed wire training, climbing, maintaining balance. Pretty much, it's a big workout, and the group is just getting little by little, and the group is just getting more and more exhausted. But however, it doesn't really last very long, as during their first break, Jeremy's laptop goes off because Xana launched an attack. And while Jeremy is ready to tell the group, "Hey, we gotta go," unfortunately, by the time he checks his laptop, the break's over and everybody's already gone off ahead. And when Jeremy goes to meet up with them, they soon discover what Xana's attack is. He's possessed a wild boar, and the boar is pretty much determined to go after Jeremy, which again does kind of feed into Xana trying to get rid of the people that can get him off, trying to attack the people who are most useful, so to speak. And since Jeremy works the computer, he goes, that means that they wouldn't have anyone. But yeah, so the boar tries attacking Jeremy, but Jim, being Jim, gets in the way of the boar and gets knocked aside. Ulrich manages to distract the boar enough so that the rest of the group can get away and head to the factory, while Jeremy opts to stay behind and help Jim because while he's alive, he's unfortunately sustained kind of an injury, as his leg is now bruised up and kind of broken, so he can barely move it. As such, Jeremy manages to pull Jim into a small alcove, and they manage to cover it with leaves, but even that Jeremy knows that this is probably going to be a temporary solution. And while they do try and find ways to steer the boar off, such as by coating themselves with leaves of minty leaves to try and throw off their scent, again, it is temporary, as the boar does eventually find them. But in the meantime, the group manages to get to the factory, and Ulrich catches up with him because he did as much as he could before the boar decided, "Screw you, I'm going back for Jeremy." But once they get to the factory, it turns out that Xana launched a two-pronged attack. Not only is he deactivating the tower and going after Jeremy, but he also sent William and a small group of Mantis to attack the core of Lyoko in Sector 5, which, when I first heard that for the episode, I was wondering why Xana would do that, since the group now has the data to reconstruct Lyoko should it be destroyed again. But then I remembered that even in the course of the series, when they got that data and reconstructed it, it did take a while to do. So even if Xana knows that the destruction of Lyoko would be temporary, for the time it would take them to reconstitute it and bring it back, that'd be more time for Xana to take more steps in whatever his master plan is. So, okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. But yeah, the groups decided to pretty much divide and conquer. Aelita and Ulrich devirtualize into the forest sector where the activated tower is, while Odd and Yumi take out William and the Mantas. ultimately it's successful as Yumi and Odd managed to get rid of the Mantas, and Yumi managed to take out William in a one-on-one fight, and Aelita and Ulrich do manage to get to the tower, do manage to find the tower, although it takes them a while to do because Xana did that whole turning it invisible thing that he did a couple times before. But back in the real world, with the boar attacks, Jeremy pretty much runs out to try and get it off his back because he knows it's going to go after him and leave Jim alone. And as such, Jeremy runs back to where I want to say the base where the base camp for the boot camp is, and he does manage to distract the boar enough, but just the boar is but just before he gets into the boar's crosshairs, Jim comes up and once more shows why he's awesome, because even despite the fact that he can barely walk, he still pretty much he says that he's not going to abandon someone in his troop, while he doesn't and while Jeremy may not have muscles, he's got guts, and he thinks that's actually something to be respected. So Jim manages to distract the boar enough for Jeremy to find a hiding spot, and after the boar knocks Jim aside, it turns around and looks for Jeremy, and before it can ram into him, Aelita manages to deactivate the tower. So all's well that ends well. As such, the episode ends with the group meeting back up at the Caddock, and it turns out that Jeremy never launched a return to the past, as we see Jim just walking with a cane, and Jeremy's justification is that he's just not that to Jim it was just a wild boar. That was not just a wild animal. He wouldn't notice anything about Xana in any of it. And the thing is, while Jeremy did briefly talk about Lyoko and so forth, Jim just kind of chalked it up to him being slightly hysterical, so it's just kind of a write-off. And as such, Jim pretty much lets him know that he'll be fine. He's going to be walking with a cane for a while, but once he's done, he can get boot camp back up. But nobody wants to go back to it, except for Jeremy, who says he's perfectly willing to go, which Jim appreciates. And after Jim leaves, the group asks Jeremy why he's doing that, and it turns out that when Jim said that Jeremy had guts, it actually did affect Jeremy, and he's actually flattered, so he's willing to do this for Jim. So, yeah. Overall, it's a good episode. I think it's good. Again, pretty much it's kind of a filler episode, but it's also a nice character episode as well. Unlike other episodes, this is one of the few that actually showcases that actually showcases what looks like to be an aftermath, so to speak. And before you say other episodes do that too, we don't really see that a lot, aside from maybe like a token one or two mention. But here, it's actually nice to see the stuff. It's the stuff with Jim and Jeremy that I think is really nice. Just them kind of as the group is going off in Lyoko to try and solve the problem, Jim and Jeremy are the ones that are kind of behind and just doing their own, and kind of having to, I want to say work together, but in this case, but actually, yeah, I'll say work together, because Jeremy and Jim do kind of help each other, give each other advice, talk it out, and while Jeremy is the one that's helping Jim out, Jim is also the one that keeps getting Jeremy out of scrapes when it's just him and the boar. So I think it's really nice, and it's just nice seeing them just kind of talk and growing closer. They don't argue, they don't get angry, they just kind of talk, and it's nice. We get brief snippets of it, because the scenes with them in the alcove talking are interspersed with the group in Lyoko trying to find the activated tower / stop William and the Mantas from destroying the core. So seeing those two scenes it's nice, but the brief snippets are admittedly really nice. Just kind of seeing them talk, Jim's talking about how Jeremy has guts, or how he's being smart, even if he doesn't have the physical stature, Jim thinks that Jeremy's got the instincts to be a good survivalist, because Jim doesn't tell Jeremy for example, when Jim is injured, Jeremy creates a makeshift splint to keep Jim from exacerbating the wound. And Jim's like, "Did you get training for that?" And it's like, "No, it's just basic knowledge. Less movement will keep you from prolonging it or keep making it hurt more." And that's when Jim compliments Jeremy and says, you make a good soldier if you just bucked up more. And Jeremy responds, "Do you think brains type of muscle? I just prefer to exercise that." Just a little bit, and then of course they exchange notes on survival as they find a mint leaf, and that's what makes Jeremy realize, oh crap, the boar will find us. And then Jim mentions that back in his arm, I think I want to say Marine days. Back during those days, he learned that he covered himself with caribou poop to try and throw off his enemies. And while Jeremy isn't exactly thrilled with being covered in caramel poop, with caribou poop, it does give him the idea to cover them both in mint leaves to try and mask their scents. So it's really nice to do. It's just little nice. It's nice little talking, and it's nice to see it actually kind of pay off as they're complimenting each other and learning from each other, and seeing Jeremy, who is this guy who didn't really want to be here, actually be the one that benefits the most from being there. Especially when, and again, we get some awesome Jim moments, and it's episodes like this that make me wish he had stayed a member of the group, because even in this episode, Jim is awesome. He takes the group asking him to do boot camp very seriously, and while the group definitely goes through more drills that they probably aren't used to, at the same time, it's nice seeing Jim and Jeremy sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. It's nice seeing him take it seriously to the point where, and ultimately still be there to defend the group when they're in danger. Again, he injures himself because the boar was charging at Jeremy and Jim got in the way of them. And then likewise, when Jeremy runs off to get the boar away from Jim, Jim still is hobbling after them and ready to pretty much tell the boar, "Come on, I'm right here," just so that it will leave Jeremy alone at least for a few minutes. Which is a nice little echo back to, or it continues to showcase more of Jim's selfless personality, which we actually did see back when he was briefly a member of the group, as at the end of season 1, when Xana wound up devirtualizing the Cankerlites into the real world. Even when Jim was outclassed and they were shooting at him, every time he kept getting blasted, he kept telling them, "Come on, yeah, is that all you got? Give me more," so that they wouldn't shoot at the kids. Again, Jim is a really nice, awesome character, and this episode continues to showcase that. And I think that's the real meat of the episode that keeps it from being bad. It's what makes it really good, actually. Just seeing Jim being selfless, and then seeing him and Jeremy have to work together to try and throw off the boar that Xana possesses. It's really nice, and seeing them, and it's really nice just seeing that camaraderie pay off in the end when Jeremy doesn't do the Return to the Past, and when Jim says, "When I'm back up, I can do boot camp again," Jeremy's the only one that says, "I'll be there." It's nice. I like that. It's not. It shows that something did come of this, and it really does feel like some nice character stuff. So, yeah. Again, so yeah. Overall, it's a good episode. The stuff with Jim, I think, was really good. Nice camaraderie with him and Jeremy, and I like that it did have an ultimate emotional payoff. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.